something like this, with groups working together. Because the alternative is an all-encompassing single party that can somehow sweep to power in a blaze of glory, overcoming all the powerful obstacles that presently exist to stop that happening, such as the first past the post system, such as the very costly and increasingly costly elections in order to, buy propaganda, and also the media blackouts that exist against small parties. The idea that a small party, whatever their name, is going to be able to rise up from the bottom against all those obstacles, I believe is a fantasy. Some people believe that, of course, there's 475 parties being formed. So presumably they must think that they will be that single party that will sweep to power. I don't believe that the system in this country facilitates any single party doing anything like that, with all the best will and intentions in the world. Very, very difficult to break out from just being a very small party as it is, let alone sweeping to power. Also, I don't believe that one single party can actually appeal to all social classes or ethnic groups or political persuasions. I don't believe that's possible for one party to do it. The present three-party system exists because it taps into and attempts to articulate the three great political traditions in the UK. That's conservatism, socialism and liberalism. Three traditions which have different backgrounds and different ways of looking at the world. But those three the present parties that represent those traditions, okay, the Conservative Party, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats, are not the only parties or groups that represent them. But they're the three main parties that articulate, roughly, those three ideas. There isn't a party out there, I believe, such as it may attempt or say it is, that could be all things to all men. I don't believe there is a party that could say, well, I can appeal to all the Liberal votes, all the socialists, working class votes, and all the middle class Tory voters in the shires. It's not going to happen. There's many parties that talk about it, but it won't happen, in my opinion. One of our councillors, David Durant, wrote an article a wee while ago, which is called The Theory of the Three Traditions. And what he's postulated is that there were actually alternative versions of those traditions out there already. For instance, he talks about a patriotic version of the Tory party would be UKIP. Possibly a similar version of the Liberals would be ourselves, the National Liberals. Perhaps a constitutional reformist version might be the DRP. That would possibly tap into those old ancient traditions and win support from those people. But it'd be very difficult for one single party to tap into all three. However, I believe that total democracy can involve people and parties which do tap into all those three traditions, so that we can, so in the four parties that we have at the moment, we perhaps have the beginnings of parties which can appeal in their message to the three traditions, individually and collectively, but not just on their own. And so that's something that we need strategically, if we want total democracy to reach out to every single person in this country, you have to have the right vehicle. So the vehicle in the shires and the sort of language that you use and the method that you promote yourself is going to be very different than in Newcastle upon Tyne. It's going to be very different. That is reality. The Conservative Party have hardly any members and elected officials in the North East.
Or anywhere else away from the South.
And vice versa, the Labour Party is extremely weak in the South and certainly in the rural areas, and the Liberal Democrats are only strong normally in their traditional areas, in the West Country, in Wales, and areas that have been strong in the past. So if those three parties, with all the resources at their disposal, the millions of pounds, the media-friendly media, on every day, one of those parties is on every day, in all the different papers, all the TV stations, they still can't break through in those different areas. And of course now we have a growing ethnic diversity in the UK. How are they going to be able to appeal to all the people from different backgrounds? It's impossible for them to do that. Yet the system is designed to ensure that one of them normally takes charge. So when the Labour Party is not quite the flavour of the year, century, it's the Conservatives, and vice versa. And the Liberals have sneaked in every now and again. But that's how the system works. They share, they job share. But individually, the Conservative Party, Labour Party, hardly have ever got the majority of votes. Almost always have got a minority. I think it was Labour Party at one time, what was it, 30-odd%, Tony Blair? They got elected in government on 30-odd% of the vote. And that's not including, of course, all those that didn't vote at all. So just of those that voted, less than 40% voted that government into power. That's how the system works. The only way it can work is by fixing the vote in that way, but equally, of course, it means that we're saddled with a system we don't like. So if we want to change it, we have to have an alternative way of doing this. And total democracy is, to me, the only strategy in town that could possibly change the system in this country. Because I hope that everybody's here today because they want to see change in this country, the way we're being treated as a people. And they say we're not going to get change by finding a messiah who's going to come forward and sweep to power. So if that's not going to happen, then what do? We cooperate. We find parties and groups of similar minds that want things to change, and we try and find ways that we can all agree on to change. So we will start to roll out these campaigns one by one, hopefully with your support, and all of those, our supporters that are not here today, to promote that to their friends and neighbours. We will try and obviously get into the media as well, if we can get the media to excuse me, to take interest in that. But I genuinely believe that total democracy can make a change, it can make a breakthrough. Obviously, we're just 4 small parties at the moment. We may be 50 small parties in the future, maybe 50 big parties, who knows? But if we don't do what we're doing, you will spend the rest of your lives, your political lives, moaning at the television, moaning at what the PM's doing, moaning what he's not doing, and being powerless. Total democracy is here to empower you, because you are what matter. Thank you. Right, let me introduce you to my colleague, Jean Everley, of the Democratic Reform Party. Jean.
Hi, well, because of your rip-roaring speech, I don't really have anything left to say. You've covered all the bases. So I will just give you a few sound bites from the government that I've heard pretty much just over the last 3 months. If you remember the Yes to AV fiasco, the No campaign was successfully able to convince us that changing the voting system was going to be too expensive, and even if they did do that, we were all too stupid to understand how to do this complicated voting system anyway. The same voting system that they use in the House of Lords to elect Lords into their positions, the same system that they use in most political parties, definitely in the Conservative, the Liberal Democrat and the Labour parties, to elect their own leaders. So if they're smart enough to be able to understand how to use this system, why aren't we? The reason we're not smart enough is because they know that if we had this system, they wouldn't get into power. It's a simple fact. They need to keep their power, because without their power, then they've got no legitimacy and they've got no stronghold in the country. So that's why I believe that the none of the above box is so important. They say that the people who don't turn out to vote because they're perfectly happy with the situation. So what's the point in voting when they know they don't need to? There's no point in it because they're happy anyway. As has been said, the reason they don't turn out to vote is because they don't see anyone worth voting for. And none of the above would give them something to vote for, and it would mean that politicians have to work harder to get your vote, and if they can't get your vote, then elections would take 2, 3, 4 times as long, because people would have to find new candidates, they would have to rethink their strategies, they would have to come up with policies that are actually relevant to you and I.